it's no secret like what is coming down the pike there, and they have a pretty finite window here of what looks like 2 years, like maybe a little longer than that if things like line up well, but certainly with these pieces in place. And I don't know, for like,
does that change how you'd approach this year? Like one thing I've been wrestling with is it sure seems like they want to avoid that second apron, and understandably so, because of the especially with repeater penalties and all that. But if you're gonna lean into a year, this is sort of the one.
Yeah,
So
you got to go for it. You got to go for it more. I mean, it's like you look at it last year too, and it's like you don't trade Gallinari at the deadline, and then what, you hold on him for. I guess like it helped you for the salary matching for this deal, but it's like.
You would have had other ways.
You would add other exactly. It's like, so now it's like, okay, this is like the window is shrinking from in terms of what you can have the kind of luxuries they've built here, and like we've gone about at length here in the last month. Like this isn't their fault that it's come to this now, but if anything, this is like changes from perspective. So it's like, I think what we realize now as we stare down the pike at this and having pretty much a fairly predictable offseason to this point is you have one real swing left with like your trade options now, and you have a little TPE, like you've kind of stockpiled these draft picks. That's great. Yeah. But like saving them for like next summer, it's like, well, that's less great, because then that's like, the pressure's even closer there. So it's like, okay, that deal might not be present this summer, but December, February, like next season, that's like they're waiting here. And I think if they're not using those tools, whether it's the picks, the TPE, or the salary you want to move on this team right now, like I think that's a huge lost opportunity. And I think honestly, that'd be a failure of this era, and it kind of like the story of this era if they like
don't get it,
really push in on a year and then that coming back to bite them.
That's interesting, and I guess that's why as much as it'd be easy to get complacent when everyone's under contract and locked up and all that, like there is just an urgency generally about you're not going to have this luxury of a great roster, and I do hope they lean into that. And I don't know what their options are right in this very moment. You hear the report and of not wanting to trade Brogdon right now, and some of that might just be trying to smooth things over because I tried to deal him once. But also, I don't think his trade value is particularly high right now. But like it could be a beneficial contract. So if you had $22 million contract and all those picks to go all in, maybe something more materializes down the road, especially into the season when maybe teams start to fade a little bit, or a team has an injury, whatever the case may be. So I do think they have to stay alert to that because it feels like they got to make that move before next summer, right? Like, I guess you could still you can move Brogdon next summer and still kind of bring back somebody of value, but it could not be the level of even a Porzingis, right? Like it's probably more of a $20 million player, which, and
the rules of trading at that point are tougher too.
Yeah. And that's the other problem is just you're a little bit more, more handcuffed on how you can proceed. So yeah, maybe it has to be trade deadline this year or whatever. But they need to be a little bit more aggressive in that instance. And maybe that's when you're willing to go over. Like I keep saying it, as much as you can look at the roster on paper and say, oh, they're a definitive title contender. Sometimes you got to get into the season and see it and feel good about it and see how the ebbs and flows and how everybody else looks. But if there's a deal there to be made, they really got to kind of go for it. And like you said, they got the picks. It's wild that they're in the position here to trade for Porzingis and extend him and supermax their two superstars, and yet they still have a swing of the bat left. It's an embarrassment of riches, but one that they must maximize long term to make it worthwhile to have splurged this money on Jaylen.